Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Ice Baby Ice Fermentation Process Colombia from House of Funk. And there's the label right there. And there's the can. And I really like the can design. Alright, House of Funk, based out of North Vancouver, British Columbia. This is their first time appearing on this channel, also our first time ever trying their coffee. And it sounds like they started out as a brewery and began roasting within the last couple of years, and have really gained some notoriety within the last couple of months, as we have a lot of familiarity with the Vancouver coffee scene, have spent an extensive amount of time in Vancouver, and had never heard of them, obviously never been to their brewery or anything like that before. And within the last couple of months, we've seen their coffee on quite a few multi-roaster websites, some major multi-roasters. So a lot of people have started carrying their coffee, and when we saw their coffee in store, especially this ice fermentation process, it definitely piqued our interest. And I'm sure a lot of people are also curious as to what ice fermentation processing is. They didn't have a whole lot of information on their website, but we did find information from Revolver's website, Revolver being a major multi-roaster in Vancouver. And it says the ice fermentation process involves a 16-hour dry fermentation in cherry form, followed by a 120-hour fermentation in grain pro bags at freezing temperatures. Once this part of the process is complete, the cherries thaw and sun-dry on raised beds as naturals. So it's kind of a hybrid, unique fermentation processing method, and obviously we're very open-minded when it comes to coffee, so we were pretty curious. This right here is day 23 of this coffee. It is definitely worth noting that we did get this coffee at day 19. It's a 110 gram can, so we only were going to get 5 cups of this coffee. And we did speed run it given that it was a little later in the roast date. But yeah, let's get our recipe out of the way real quick. So we brewed it at 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio at 200 degrees Fahrenheit through the Chemex. And given we've had quite a few coffees from Vancouver, this one is on the more developed side of those coffees. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the processing method of this coffee. So I'm going to call this a shade under medium Canadian for the roast profile. With that out of the way though, let's start discussing the coffee itself. And day 19, which was our first impression, and it left a very lasting first impression, as it essentially tastes like if Jell-O was made with wine. It's like a winey Jell-O. That's kind of the first taste we got. And it finishes off with a pretty notable citrus component. And then day 20, much of the same. This coffee is going to be consistent, and obviously we only had 5 cups of it, and they were all pretty close in time frame to each other. All pretty much brewed the same. We lowered the temperature throughout the time we were drinking it, but again, pretty similar. You're gonna have a boozy berry with a clear and distinct citrus fruit component in this cup. One thing we want to heap major praise on House of Funk for is we've had a lot of boozy berry coffees, a ridiculous amount of boozy berry coffees, as it's super trendy in the coffee world right now. And so many of them are overbearing, over the top, and this one right here, it stops at that point. This one's a little bit more palatable than a lot of the other ones we've had, as we can kind of stomach the intense amount of alcoholic component in this coffee relative to a lot of other ones. Day 21 continued lowering the temperatures, and it does help the coffee. That's why we settled on 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Lowering the extraction was really kind of helping keep the overbearing alcohol at bay, so it never got to that point where it was a little too much. And essentially raspberry Jell-O wine with a heavy citrus finish, and same note for yesterday, so don't need to discuss that too much. And even putting it through the automatic coffee maker, because today we put it through the automatic coffee maker to see if we get something a little different, it's pretty much in line with how it had been on the rest of the days. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And one thing I did find funny reading House of Funk's website is they said that they're not afraid of acidity. It sounds like they're not afraid of kind of bringing out that acidity and being very experimentational with their coffee, and that's fine. So I'm very curious to see how some of their other coffees might turn out. With this coffee right here, yeah, acidity at level 4, berry fruit level 4, citrus fruit at level 4. I mean, there are 3 very dominant factors in this cup of coffee, and those are going to be it. Pretty lasting finish as well. Other things worth noting, definitely worth noting, the bitterness, it's at level 3, and we like to specify exactly what the bitterness is, because rarely is it coffee bitterness, but rather this is kind of a more alcoholic bitterness. Body level 3, probably going to be a level 4, being put through the automatic coffee maker, truth be told. Let's see here, cleanliness is going to be pretty low, as you would imagine. Sweetness level 3, probably about a 2.5, but we'll push it up to that level 3. Yeah, this coffee is essentially essentially is what it is. All right. So our overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee, as well as House of Funk, there are quite a few of them. So the first thing I want to say is this coffee reminded us a lot of the watermelon sugar from Doc that we had earlier this year, and didn't necessarily love that coffee. We don't love the boozy berry coffees. That's become pretty clear, as they are usually too much. Don't like the flavor profile of them in the slightest, and this is very much in line with those coffees. However, it's not as over the top. That watermelon sugar was very, very heavy. It was very, very alcohol berry forward. This one is very much in line with that coffee, but it is not to that extreme point. So that's huge credits to House of Funk for having something a little bit more palatable in our opinion. Other things, House of Funk, given that they're kind of experimentational and newer, we really, really want to try some of their coffees, maybe in person, something a little different. They had an espresso roast that we weren't going to do filter coffees for, which sounded like I think it was Ethiopia. That sounded really, really good, but we weren't going to buy an espresso roast and review an espresso roast. So they do have some coffees that sound a little bit more our flavor profile, but it's pretty obvious that this coffee right here isn't our flavor profile, as we haven't liked any coffee that is kind of in line with this boozy berry or this flavor profile to begin with. So obviously the type of person we would suggest this coffee to is somebody that does like the boozy berry. We honestly feel like this is probably one of the better done boozy berry coffees that we have had, and yeah, it does have a pretty notable citrus component to it. I think if you really like kind of jello shots, I think that's what they label it as actually, raspberry and lime jello shot. Okay, then yeah, this coffee is pretty good for that, but not necessarily our favorite, and we're definitely going to try House of Funk next time we get to go to Vancouver. Awesome news that it looks like the border will be opening up in August, so we might actually get the opportunity to finally go to Vancouver and review a bunch of coffees, bring back a bunch of international coffees, which we have been dying to do for over a year now. So excited about that. I think we're going to leave this at that though. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it, as well as if you've had anything from House of Funk, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of them. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Ice Baby Ice Fermentation Processed Colombia from House of Funk. Thank you for watching.